Hi guys, this is Emilio from symulate.dev and I am very excited to announce that we are launching Simulate today. Simulate basically is a developer tool that allows developers, front-end developers, to create whole UIs, whole front-ends without any backend, any single endpoint existing. It leverages AI. We are defining endpoints in our front-end that request to the simulate backend. The simulate backend generates the proper response, the proper data, and then you can display it in your application. The very special thing about it is that you actually don't need to put any extra effort into migrating the application or using your actual backend once it's ready. You can actually just switch one configuration and then it will perfectly use your actual backend and you can switch back and forth anytime. I'm just going to give you a quick overview of how it works when you're a developer. Here you define your user schema, for example. It has a UUID and a full name, which is supposed to be here a typical Indian name. This is the instruction for the AI that it will follow when generating this specific property, in this case the name. And then there's some other properties, and from this user schema you will infer the type into a user type, which you will be able to use throughout your application. And it's just a normal type, so name becomes string and email becomes string and so on. And then with this type here and the schema here, you can define your endpoints. For example, here you have the get users endpoint, which returns a list of users, and it has a path, a method, and so on. And here it has a schema. In this case, it's an array of these user objects we defined up here. This is passed to the AI, and the AI will know what to generate. This is also passed to the AI, the mock property, and here we can define how many of those objects we want generated, and also give it some general instruction for the whole endpoint. In this case, it's 9 users. And then we also have the get user endpoint, which is essentially the same thing, just for one user. Now we can use those endpoints in our application. For example, here we use the get users endpoint, and here we use the get one user, so get user endpoint. We are also passing an ID here, which we get from this method. And this is important because later when we switch to the actual backend, we obviously also need this ID. And we are also passing some metadata, which is not necessary for the actual backend, but it's nice to have because we are passing the user that the user clicked on in the UI. And by doing this, the AI will know what kind of user to generate with this request. So that, for example, when you click on Max, then the AI generates Sabrina that wouldn't be optimal for customer demos. So you can pass this whole user object here so that when you click on a Max, you pass the Max user, and the AI will generate the proper user called Max with the email it already had and so on. Now I can show you this in action. We have an example application, the exact application that I just showed you actually, that uses Simulate. And I can also refresh this. And this is a cached response that was already generated. And as you can see, it generated Indian names, typical Indian names, I suppose, and exactly 9 of them. Yeah, you can also, what I just explained, you can also click into the detail of one of them, and the AI will generate a proper single user with the same picture and the same name and so on. Now, a really cool thing about Simulate, as I mentioned earlier, is that you don't need to put any effort into refactoring it or using the actual backend. So what we will do now is we will switch this from fake data, which we just saw, to real backend. I provided an example backend, which also provides this user's endpoint, and we can see the users are, for example, Alice Johnson. Remember those names, so you can verify that it's the actual backend. Alice Johnson, Bob Smith, Carol Martinez, and so on. And it's running, and localhost 3001. And all we have to do is provide this backend base URL and switch our environment to production. Now, if we go to the application again, we can already see that it is now using the actual backend. We see Alice Johnson, Bob Smith, Carol Martinez, and so on. We can click into the detail, and everything works with just one configuration switch, and it's basically instant. So that's obviously very cool and helpful, and just allows you to seamlessly switch from the fake data to the real backend without putting any additional effort. It's just this one configuration. And what this ultimately allows you to do is, as a front-end developer, define what data you need, what endpoints you need, and use it already without any backend existing. Develop your whole UI, and just basically generate the data from thin air. Just use the properties you need. If you think your user object needs an additional parameter, like, I don't know, address, for example, and it didn't have that before, then you just add it into your user schema, maybe with some instruction, and the AI will automatically generate it, and you can just use it. Your backend team can work in parallel with you. You can either export OpenAPI schemas like this through the Simulate SDK with a command, or you can do it through the platform, which I will show you next. You have the endpoints tab here. This is our platform. You can manage your usage and your projects and everything here. And here we have our endpoints. For example, here the user's endpoint. You can see all of its properties. You can see that it's an array response. You can see the different properties, that this should be a typical Indian name too, for example. And your backend team can always look at this and see how they should design their backend endpoints. You sync your endpoints from the front end to Simulate also with a command in the Simulate SDK. Additionally, you can also download an OpenAPI spec here, just like the one with the SDK, but here from the platform. So here your backend team can also download this from the platform. Okay, to summarize, this allows you to build front-end fast, quickly, show demos to customers quickly, without having to mock data manually, which takes time, or create a whole backend, which also takes time. You just build your UI, you show it to customers. If they want something different, you do that too with Simulate. You make these changes. You need additional data, you just add it to your schemas, and then once it's done, you can develop the backend. You don't need to do it before, which saves a lot of time and effort. And once the backend is ready, as I said, you can just switch it with one configuration. And if the backend actually exactly matches what you defined in your front end, which it should, then it will just work seamlessly. and that covers the core functionality of Simulate. I would be very happy if you would give me some feedback, if you would leave a comment and visit the website. There is a free plan with 20,000 free AI tokens that you can use. You can generate some data, play around with it, define some endpoints, and see what the value it is for yourself. You can check it out. And if you want to learn more about it, you can check out the documentation also on the platform. Everything is explained here, how everything works. And I would be very happy if you checked it out. And thank you.